Hi, thanks a lot for picking up one of our 7 mead tastings. So today, Will and I are going to be talking you through pretty much the range of what we do here at Gosnells, is that right?
Yeah, so we're going to be going through two main styles of mead, I guess, especially two main styles that we do. In the tasting bundle, you're going to get 4 cans of mead and 3 specialty meads.
So the 4 cans are the kind of core range, the ones we kind of make most of. So they're, I guess, a classic hydromel style, which is, I mean, there's thousands of different types of mead.
Even with that, you can go hydromel, session mead, sparkling mead. I think there's even a short mead, which is a term for a short aged or non-aged mead. But yeah. So there are 4 core meads, and then we've got 3 special things that we've knocked up in the brewery as well. Yeah, so we do quite a lot of barrel program work here, and we do some high gravity sort of brews as well. So the first one of that will be the pineapple Kvik, which is a roasted pineapple and Kvik. Kvik is a traditional Norwegian ale yeast, so that's ferments super tropical, super high. It's got a high tolerance for alcohol. It produces some nice sort of tropical notes, and we just thought we'd put a little bit of roasted pineapple on the top of that and let that ferment out.
Cool.
And then the other 2 are barrel fermented and barrel aged meads. So they're both based on a traditional base. One's got plums and the other one's got mango and Scotch bonnet.
That's really exciting.
So yeah.
So should we open up the pack and
let's see what
we got?
So the first one you'll have is a little sheet, which will have a little descriptor about everything. It'll have where you can find this video, but you've already found it, so well done. On the other side, just a little bit of space just to take some notes, or to sort of write down anything that you liked or disliked, or something you want to just take note of. But we'll probably
let's
jump straight in.
Well, let's open it up, right? So we've got the 4-pack of meads. That's our classic meads. Then we've got the 3 special meads, which come in the little bottles, and then we've got a few other bits and bobs. So we've got some honey. So what's cool about this kit is you get the honey that the meads have been made from.
Yeah, so you'll get 2 honeys. So one honey is the European blossom, which is what we base the cans on. So that's a poly blossom. So a blossom is a flower that produces fruit. So that's a blend of different blossoms, and then we also have a monoflora honey, the orange blossom, which is an orange blossom honey.
And then we've got some other bits and bobs. We've got a bit of info about us and the brand. We've got a seed bomb. So this is our helping out the bees, especially over winter.
So it's not a piece of chocolate, don't eat it.
Don't eat it. So if you plant this in your garden, a load of wildflowers will grow up to kind of
we did that outside the brewery, and over the summer it just went absolutely nuts. It's a beautiful little thing to see.
And a few coasters as well, just to brighten up your desk.
Oh, we might as well use these.
There we go. Right, so where should we start? Should we start with some honey?
I think we should start with some honey. So first off, we'll have a look at the orange blossom, the European blossom. Sorry.
So what's really cool about mead and the mead we make is that depending on the different style of honey we use, or different type of honey, and depending on what the bees have been foraging for, you get a different flavour in the honey. And then when you ferment through the sugars, that kind of all gets accentuated, so you can get that bee to bottle flavour.
Yeah,
That's kind of what
and just like if you're new to mead as well, we should probably cover what mead is. So mead, like grape cider wine, honey is to mead. So it's just where you get your fermentable sugars from. So just like in wine, honey has a terroir. So depending on where the bees have been foraging, the weather, the soil that's growing, the flora, the different types of flora, you get a beautiful range of, or a beautiful expression of the area it comes from.
So this is a blossom honey, as we mentioned. It's a blend of different types of honey. And so what we do is we like to blend a load of honeys together so we get a consistent flavour. So year after year, depending on, obviously it varies depending on what the bees have been eating, we're trying to get a really consistent flavour so we can make our core meads out of them, and they taste the same each year.
Yeah, so let's have a bit of a go. So this is quite a, I wouldn't say a typical honey, it's still quite a really, really nice honey, but it's a nice sort of rounded sweetness. It's got a little bit of fruitiness to it, a little bit of that genuine honey character as well. It's quite a simple, complex honey, if that makes sense. Yeah,
it's a good base honey in which we like to layer a load of other flavours on.
Yeah, and that's kind of what you want from this honey, is to be able to have a honey that can stand up to lots of different adjuncts that come in. So if you're going to put a flavour over the top, then this honey is really good because you'll pull different parts out of it. So, you know, if you put, like with the hibiscus, you put it in, you put that nice honey character, but you also get a little bit of that sort of red fruity sort of character come through as well with it, and a little bit of that's from the honey as well. But then you put the hops in there and you get a little bit more of that apple sort of blossom that comes through in it as well.
Yeah, so that's really cool. And then the next honey we like to use, it's one of our favourite types of honey, is the orange blossom honey. This is actually the honey I used when I first started brewing to make our Gosnells of London, so the original. Now comes in those big 75cl bottles.
Yeah, so this one is a honey that you'll see a very big difference between the two. This one's got a roundy, little bit more musky sort of feel to it. It's got a higher acidity. There's a little bit of like citrus undertone, and sometimes that can be attributed to your mind just sort of looking for that. When it says orange on the side, yeah, you're looking for that citrus, but it's there. The acid profile is a little higher, and we like to use that. Well, it's more of a premium honey as well, so we really like to use that when we're trying to showcase the honey. So especially with these traditionals, or God, you call them melomels, or you know, there's lots of names that you can go with that, and these names are usually historically driven as well. So, you know, like these can be called metheglins as well, which is anything that has a spice added to it or a flower. So the hibiscus or the hop would be classified as a metheglin, which comes from the Welsh term for medicine.
There you go, that's a mead fact for you.
That is, and yeah, a lot of them get their names from these sort of historical things, like a hydromel is Greek for...
rose.
Yeah, it's like
rose hips, or...
No, it's rose honey?
Oh, I don't know. Well,
yeah, I'll remember that in a minute.
Yeah, fair enough.
But,
so I think what's really cool about these two honeys, you can see the difference between them. So one of them, I like to describe as quite, so the orange blossom honey is quite a distinct kind of sharp flavour almost, and the other one's a bit more rounded. So you can kind of see how we're going to use that as we make our meads. So now's probably a good time, if you're not set up, get yourself a glass, make sure your meads are all chilled and you're ready to go.
Yeah, so remember, chill these ones. These ones you can serve at room temperature as well. Or you can serve them slightly chilled. I probably wouldn't put them in the freezer and have them super cold.
Yeah, you want them to
just a little bit to open up, and because they're oxidized as well during that fermentation process, because they're barrel fermented, you know, having them open and get a bit of oxygen just help lift up that flavor profile as well.
Sure. So, should we get into it?
Let's get into it. So I think we'll start with the hopped.
Yeah, I normally start with the hopped.
Yeah, the hopped is one that's a little bit more accessible to people in understanding what the flavour profile is going to be. If you've drank beer, you know what the hops are like, and you know what the sort of flavour profile they give, a little bit of bitterness, a nice little bit of aromatic as well. So yeah, these ones are done with US Cascade hops.
Right, so quite big hops.
Quite big hops, you know, not super tropical, but a little bit tropical. Oh, that's what the coasters are good for, because when you spill, you don't move it all around.
Well, try not to anyway.
But, so the first thing you're going to sort of see is that beautiful colour. So we're looking at that first honey here, the European blossom, which is quite dark and yellow. And you're going to see just a little bit of that stick in the final product.
Yeah.
We've got a little bit of head retention as well. Unlike beer, we don't have as much proteins in our mead as well, so we don't get as good head retention. So when you see that head drop, it's not flat, it's just how that sort of product settles out.
Sure, it's worth saying that the cans are obviously all carbonated, so it kind of helps to lift some of the flavours. They're 4%, so they're quite sessionable and quite easygoing. And that carbonation just adds to the mouthfeel, and the CO2 is actually a little bit acidic, so it kind of sharpens up some of the flavours.
Yeah. So the other thing too is, you know, I get it all the time. Why do you shake your glass, or why do you roll it around? Sometimes you do it because you're adding a little bit of oxygen into it, or you're knocking out a little bit of that CO2, so you can lift some of those more volatile compounds up into
the aromatics kind of,
and you can get those into your nose.
So what does it taste like, or smell like on the nose? Well,
so on the nose, the first thing I always get with our stuff, it's honey. So you're going to get honey at the forefront, and that's kind of the idea. But just behind that, those sort of secondary flavours start to kick in. There's a little bit of apple, I get a little bit of elderflower.
Yeah, I definitely get the elderflower coming through, and that's the kind of one of the flavours that people often mention is that elderflower.
Yeah, and it's again talking about it being hops. It's something that you've smelled before and you understand, and if you're doing these sort of tastings quite often, you get a little bit deeper, and when you start getting a bit deeper into this, you get a little slight citrus note. There's a little bit of There's a little bit of almost like grassiness in there as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's have a taste. Cheers.
Oh, I always forget how good that is. So, on the palate, for me, it's, you obviously get that hit of kind of, not sweetness, but like, you definitely know there's some honey character coming through.
Yeah, so for me, the first part of palate is adjusting to that sweetness level.
Yeah.
And that's why it's always good to start with the hops, because of the hops as well, you get a little bit of bitterness. So that kind of helps towards the end of the palate as it's also start to bitter out and get that little bit of tannin structure, a little bit of astringency at the end. But that middle palate, the acid seems to come through and just sort of lighten it up as well. And you get a nice sort of floral and sort of, say grassy again.
Yeah, and elderflowery kind of notes.
Yeah, this sort of
floral notes. Yeah,
and they sort of come through all the way through that palate, and then you got a nice sort of drying finish with the hops.
Yeah, it's a nice kind of short, sharp finish. I think it's nice and crisp and refreshing.
And you'll see that when we start comparing these cans together, even though they've got a very similar base, they really do differ past the first part of the palate.
Yeah.
Some of them, like the Citra, which we'll get to, a little bit salty at the front as well, but it's more salty at the finish.
Yeah.
But yeah, so enjoy, guys. Let's move on to the next one.
Yeah, obviously feel free to give us a pause whilst you enjoy this. Don't expect you to ramp through
Yeah, that's it.
7 meads.
When you look at the video and you go, I've got to drink 7 meads in 25 minutes, you can. If you want to record that and send it to us, that's always fun. We do love a very intense short drinking session. So yeah, efficient. Yeah, that's it.
So I normally go on to the Citra.
Yeah.
So these were actually formulated at the same time. So when we were looking to make the hops, this was a much more experimental recipe. Kind of, I think the inspiration from Nick, who made it, your predecessor, was a goza. So taking inspiration from that. So
a goze, if you don't know, a goze is a sour beer, so a lactose sour beer with coriander, lemon peel, and hops.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we've gone with here, except we've transferred the coriander for tarragon. So we've sort of brightened it up, and the tarragon gives you a little bit of anise, not over the top. As somebody who's quite sensitive to that sort of anise flavour profile, it's very well incorporated. And then the saltiness just gives it a nice, clean
some sea salt
finish.
in it. You forgot that.
We did. So at the end, we got a little bit of sea salt. So the story when I started here that I really enjoyed was that Tom used to drive down to Cornwall, fill up an IBC full of seawater, bring it back.
It wasn't an IBC, it was a big jerry can, because the Clio can only take
I've seen that Clio take a lot. It's a beautiful car if you're looking for an old car, buy a Clio.
Yeah, no, Anyway, so it was originally with seawater. Obviously, we scaled up the recipe, so we replaced it with sea salt. And we make
a little bit more consistency as well. And as you sort of start to like a recipe, you're always developing, and you never quite finish.
Yeah. Thanks, Will.
More than welcome.
So I think this is the most complex of the cans in terms of the flavour. There's a lot of flavours layered on top of each other, and actually, that's quite challenging to do well, to kind of get each of those elements to sing both together and individually.
Yeah, so when I talk about this with people, I remember when I first started brewing that I was told that not to use any more than 3 ingredients, stick to quite simple flavors, otherwise you don't know what's going to happen at the end.
Yeah.
And that's good for developing recipes, but once you've developed a recipe and then you start moving it along, you can really start getting used to it. And this is where this is at. So when you put your nose into it, Tom, what do you get?
Oh, it's richer than the first one. So I can get the tarragon coming through. I obviously know it's tarragon. It's not that familiar a smell or a flavour, but that for me is the predominant. A little bit grassy, a little bit anise, creamy almost. Like there's a richness to it.
And you can really smell the salt too. And I always have this sort of can you smell salt? And I'm like, you can smell the ocean, you can smell salt.
Yeah, it's true.
So it's got a little bit of that sort of character to it as well. We also use lemon peel in here as well, just to give it a little bit of citrus,
something to bite into.
Yeah, something to lighten it up with the acid profile.
This is definitely one of the ones that you want to have a couple of sips. It will open up. As we said, it was quite complex, so you need to sort of bend your mind around it a little bit.
Yeah, especially after the hopped.
Yeah.
The hopped had a nice dry finish. This one, you're really picking up a little bit more of the sweetness. You can really get that I think it's a lemon peel that's giving it that sort of roundy creaminess to it as well. So just because we use not just the peel, we use a little bit of the pith as well.
Yeah, so you get some of those oils coming out.
You get some of those oils, and it gives it a nice rounded sort of feel to it as well. You get a nice little bit of hop character in there as well.
Yeah.
It helps dry out at the end, but then you can get hit with that beautiful salty finish at the end.
I know, that for me, that's what makes this exceptional, right? It's that salty, almost like, it's not like salted caramel, but in the same way that you use salt and salted caramel.
Yeah,
so
salt and sweet go together so well, you know.
Exactly.
But yeah, cheers.
That's tasting really good today. I kind of oscillate between which is my favourite, but sometimes you just taste it and go, oh, that's
That's
really
the beauty about the 4-pack, is that there's definitely one in there for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
So guys, this is probably another good time. Pause your video, finish off your drink, enjoy it, and then we'll move on to the next one.
Yeah, and if you've got any thoughts or questions, then either send us an Instagram or an email. Yeah, and we'd love to hear what people think about what we're doing.
We really do. It's the best sort of way to get feedback.
It does make my day when people send us an email. I had a lovely phone call from someone the other day.
Nice.
It's just really nice.
Well, this is it. When you actually give your number out to people and they use it, it's quite surprising,
Exactly.
you know. And it's usually you always think you're going to be scared of people just annoying you with stuff, but we only get great things come through.
Yeah,
so
which is nice.
all right.
Well, hopefully you've had a little bit of a pause. Wait and carry on. Where are we going next, Will?
So I think the next one that I usually like to go to is the sour. So let's crack open the sour.
Cool. So tell us about the sour, Will.
So-
How's this made and how's this different?
So the sour is my baby. This is a mixed fermentation mead. So mixed fermentation just means that it's using different yeast and bacteria. It doesn't necessarily mean that it is sour when you say mixed fermentation, but generally it is. So with this one we're using Saccharomyces, which is your normal brewers or baking yeast. Then we're using Lactobacillus, which is what you'll find in yogurt and used to cure cheese. And then we also use Acetobacter, which you'll find in vinegar and in Belgian beers, which is where I sort of got the inspiration for this growing up. I loved Belgian beer. It was something so strange to me, that combination of acid profiles and the sourness that goes to it always struck me as something I always wanted to create.
Yeah, and I guess what's really cool is those three organisms form this kind of symbiotic relationship where they're kind of producing different compounds that they all kind of eat together. And
Yeah,
it's really
so-
unique mixed fermentation.
Yeah, so the fun side of that too is that Acetobacter converts alcohol into acetic acid. So you've got a different style of fermentation happening there as well. So that means you need to produce the alcohol using the Saccharomyces and that converts sugar to alcohol, and then you've got the Lactobacillus, which will convert sugar to lactic acid, and then you've got the Acetobacter that takes some of that alcohol and converts that over to acetic
So
acid.
what we do is we obviously essentially sour up a mead, don't we? So we make quite a sour base and we back it off with a sweeter mead, which is technically they use in Belgian beers as well.
Yeah, and this is what you'll find about this is it's a balance between sour and sweet. So it's not like your typical sour beer, which can be quite acidic and dry. This has got a nice balanced sweetness to it that really makes it unique.
Yeah, cool.
So let's have a go.
Oh, so on the nose you definitely get that acid profile, right?
Yeah, so you get a little bit of that sort of vinaigrette, that nice rounded sweet smell of the lacto as well. And you get nice yeast characters. We also use a little bit of tea in this as well, and that's just to give a little bit of nitrogen to our mixed fermentation. So with that there, you're going to get a little bit of this tannin structure and a little bit of brownness coming from the tea as well. Other than that, it's pretty much a straight mead. So you're looking at just how that bacteria works with the honey, which is really cool.
And then on the flavour, you get this. It's a little bit funky. Is not necessarily. It's not super funky. But there's a hint of funk in there. And then there's the acid, which is nicely foiled with the sweetness, and then for me it just gets you salivating at the back of the mouth.
Yeah, and the tea allows it just to give that little bit of maltiness, that little bit of biscuit that you can kind of get in there, or bread some people associate it with, and that just gives it a nice full round feel to it as well, which is really, really cool.
It's really cool.
But yeah, this is definitely, we talked about it before, about having our favourites. This one's always my first or my second favourite. It takes a very long time to make, probably about 3 or 4 times as long as all the other cans, but
there we go, it's worth it. It's worth it. So guys, again, let us know what you think about that. And take a pause, take a breather if you like, and then we'll continue.
Yeah, enjoy.
Where are we going next then, Will?
Okay.
Oh, well, go for the last can, the hibiscus, which is my personal favourite, the one that I like to drink in the shower.
Please tell me more. I haven't heard this story.
The world's split about shower beers.
Well, in Australia, it's always been a thing. It's not even a question of, oh, that's weird. It's just you're either a person who does it or you don't.
Yeah, so I'm a person who likes a really cold beverage in the shower. And this is my go-to beverage, especially at the moment. So it's the hibiscus mead, beautifully pink.
As you can see, yeah. And this one, talking a little bit more about not having proteins in our mead as well. The hibiscus itself actually gives a little bit of protein structure to this as well. That's why you get a little bit better head retention with the hibiscus versus the other 3 cans.
So this is made by essentially jamming the fermenter full of hibiscus flowers, so dried hibiscus flowers.
Which, if you've ever had dried hibiscus flowers, they're very tart, they're beautiful and fruity, and they're just a really cool thing to work with. And when we put our nose into it, we'll see all these fruits and these red fruit sort of flavours that come through, but there's nothing there but hibiscus, which is why I really love working with this, this ingredient.
Yeah, so on the nose I get blackcurrant, jam,
very
fruity,
jammy.
very jammy.
Yeah, I get a little bit of, little tiny bit of cranberry and a little bit of raspberry, these sort of like berry characteristics.
Red fruits,
these red fruits. Not so much red stone fruit, but more berry-esque.
It's a red stone fruit.
Would you call plum a red stone?
I suppose you would, wouldn't you?
Yeah. It's red on the outside. It's usually got white flesh.
Anyway.
Oh, can you get? Conversation for another time.
Yeah.
This is the beauty about drinking mead, is as you get further on, the conversation gets a little
more fluid. Yeah, so this is just gorgeous, right?
So on the palate, you really got to notice the level of sweetness drop, and that's not necessarily less sugar than the others or less residual honey than the others. It's more that acid profile from the hibiscus is really lifting that drink to be, perception of sweetness to drop.
Yeah, and I think what the hibiscus, there must be some tannic structure in this hibiscus flower.
Yeah.
Because you get that dryness at the end, which I always compare to, say, a cranberry juice.
Yeah.
So that drying out, it's not dry, it's sweet, but then you get that dry finish, which is nice.
And it's really fun to sort of go through that, especially when you compare all the cans and how different they are based on their ingredients. This one's one of those ones where you're just like, wow, that's so diversely different to the rest, and it's only one ingredient.
Yeah, which is amazing.
Yeah, cool.
So
really
guys,
fun.
take another breather if you need it, and then we'll continue on with some of the small batch.
It's also a good opportunity to wash your glass out. Moving on to the next meads that are quite dry, it's a really good opportunity just to clean that up. But we're just going to crack on because we're professionals.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's it. So my suggestion of the first one to start on would be the roasted pineapple cavik. Oh, 50-50, I can't see it either. Of course I know. So we talked about this. Oh, no.
Yeah, no, please go ahead, Will.
So we talked about this a little earlier on. This is a Norwegian farmhouse ale yeast. It ferments at a really high temperature compared to most yeast, where you can actually push it up to about 40 degrees C.
And it's quite well behaved, isn't it?
And super clean. It doesn't throw off a lot of sulfur or these sort of other not wanted compounds. Go into too much detail. But then we roasted up some pineapple and we just put it on the top. So this isn't meant to be a straightforward pineapple and mead. This is a mead with a little bit of pineapple.
I think you'll probably, if I remember this rightly, detect more of the caramelly roasted element than maybe the raw pineapple.
Yeah, and it's you're going to get a lot of the yeast character, and that's kind of what we want to showcase in this particular mead, is that cavik yeast, which is so fun to work with and so tasty.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So this is a lot stronger as well, right?
So this is 12%. Which is probably at like a normal white wine strength, and this would be the lower end of a traditional mead. So usually traditional meads will be about 12 to 15%.
Yeah.
So this is kind of just a little bit lower than the rest. But yeah.
Sorry. So on the nose, you're getting some of the sweetness. You're getting more of the booze comes through. Obviously, it's stronger. So
you're also getting just a little bit of this. I attribute it to like the green part of a pineapple.
Green, yeah. Okay,
so just on the tip, so you still get this green sort of tropical note to it. It's not mango, it's not pineapple, it's not these sort of like usual tropical fruits, but it has a tropical sort of element to it. Yeah.
Oh,
cheers.
Yeah, so that's really interesting. So it's a lot drier than the previous meads. Is it bone dry? Has it gone bone dry?
So this is bone dry.
I say
So-
all the sugar's been converted into booze, pretty much.
Yeah, so this goes down to a finishing grab of just below 1, so a little bit less dense than water.
Because of the booze in it. Yeah.
Because of the alcohol, and the alcohol's a little bit more acidic.
Yeah.
With this one here, when you put it into the palate, the first thing you get, especially from the other ones, you're going to get a little bit of alcohol, and you're just going to have to wait for your palate to adjust. Same as, like, I'm a whiskey drinker as well, and if I haven't drank whiskey for a while, it takes me a glass or two before I can really adjust my palate to it and allow those nuanced flavours to come through. So I think the best thing to do now is just have one more sip. After your palate's been shocked, the second sip will really allow you to appreciate it.
Yeah, so I get this, there's that sweetness from the honey, but it's not sweet, obviously.
Yeah,
because
which is
sugar
really
in it,
cool.
Which is really cool.
So with honey coming through, like, it's the perception of sweetness that we always attribute it to. So when you get that nice honey character come in, you expect sweetness. The acid profile's there as well, because not a lot of people know that honey is quite acidic as well.
It is, yeah.
And that kind of melds together and gives you this nice long sweetness that actually isn't there.
Yeah, that's really cool. And so for me, this is, I don't know how to describe it. It's got some sherry-like notes. It's a little bit oxidized, so it's dry, but with that hint of sweetness. It's really interesting.
We'll really see that as we jump through to the next two barrel fermented, which we've really tried to push that in. You'll get a lot of that sort of character come through. But yeah, finish up, guys. You don't need to drink the whole bottle, as we said, because they've been oxidized a little bit. These are one of the ones that
will keep for a while.
They'll keep for a while. You know, you can let it open. The oxygen's not going to ruin it like you would a bottle of wine. You could put it into the fridge and drink it 3 or 4 days later, and it'll still taste just as good. You might even get lucky and taste a bit better.
Maybe. So where next then, Will?
So I think next we'll jump to the Plum.
So these are both 2 barrel fermented projects. So that means that we
It's a
fermented
good time to
it.
pause as well.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, have a pause.
Have a pause. We'll have a pause,
Just get going.
and then we'll get going again.
So where are we going next then, Will?
So we're going to go to the Plum, I think.
Cool.
So the Plum is a barrel fermented traditional mead, and once that fermentation had finished, we put in a whole lot of fresh plums. So it was plum season at the time, so got a whole lot of plums, cut them out, took the pips out, and put skins and flesh straight into the barrel, which we love to do here because it makes the cleaning out lots of fun. But it really, as we said with the roasted pineapple Kveik, it's not meant to be a plum mead. It's a mead with just a little bit of this hint of stone fruit behind, and just trying to pick up on those nuances. So these are meant to be a little bit more like white wine than they are like a traditional sweet mead, where the honey is really showcased and pushed forward.
And so what are we getting on the nose, Will? For me, it's a lot sweeter and softer than the Kveik.
You're getting a little bit of, these were first filled bourbon barrels as well.
Yes,
so
a bit of spice.
there's a little bit of spice, a little bit of winter spice, a little bit of vanilla as well.
Yeah.
And you're also getting those high alcohols from the bourbon. So you'll notice that when we move into the palate, that it'll smell quite bourbony and have these sort of like high alcohols, but then when it hits your mouth, it's nothing like bourbon. It doesn't give you the burn, it doesn't give you the shock to the palate as much as bourbon would. Yeah, cheers. The other side of this that's really cool as well is there's just a little bit of earthiness in there as well, and just a little bit of stone fruit. When you put it onto the nose, just in the background there, you're getting a little bit of that plum flesh sort of feel. And for me, plums don't have a huge flavour until you start to dry them and make prunes.
Yeah.
But they've got this nice sort of like dry, fleshy sort of characteristic to them, and that comes through here quite well.
Yeah, so on the palate, this for me is drier than the first one. You can taste the action of that oak, right? So you get a bit more spice, a bit more vanilla coming through.
Yeah, you can really taste that if you've had like an aged Rioja or something like that,
Yeah.
and you can really taste that bit of tannin structure from the wood, and a little bit of earthiness in there as well. And this just sort of makes it a lot more complex, and that comparing to the roasted pineapple, that flavour sticks in your mouth so much longer.
It does linger, yeah.
But yeah, enjoy.
Enjoy.
Again, guys, have a pause, come back when you're ready,
And we'll get on with the
move
last
on to
mead.
the last one.
So Will, tell us about this last mead, which
So
is bloody cool.
Yeah,
Right,
this
really
is
exciting.
talking about different names of things. This is technically called a capsimel. So,
Why is it called a capsimel, Will?
So, because it has a capsicum in it. So this has actually got Scotch bonnet and mango. So in Peckham, you go down the Peckham High Road or Peckham Rise, it's called. And Rye Lane. Go.
Sorry.
That's it. Yep, we're all learning. So you during the right time of the season, mangoes and Scotch bonnets are everywhere. So we went down and walked down Peckham Rye Lane.
Rye Lane.
I almost got it. Give me one more go. And we just picked up whatever was in season and what was there, and we got, I think, about 7 Scotch bonnets into the barrel and probably about 10 or 15 mangoes.
Yeah.
So again, what's really cool about using whole fruit, especially with mangoes got quite a coarse sort of flesh, and it's quite, you say astringent? It's quite,
There's something else.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think of the words,
you can really feel the structure that it brings to the meat compared to the plum. It just gives a nice, thicker, rounder mouthfeel. The coolest thing about this is how fruity Scotch bonnet is.
Yeah. Now, Scotch bonnets, are they underrated? I don't know. They're awesome.
Yeah,
as a
they're
chili.
just, yeah, and they're the right amount of heat. If you're
Yeah.
cooking barbecue at home and you like a little bit of spice and you don't want to, put Carolina Reapers in there just so nobody eats your food. This is the right amount of heat. So what we end up doing with the plum and with the mango as well is we fermented both of these in 2 separate bourbon barrels. One we fermented really fast, which was the mango, and one we fermented really slow when we underpitched the yeast. So this one has got a lot more of those sort of high alcohols. It's got a lot more of these like acid profile, and then we've just added a little bit of fruit to sweeten it out, and then a little bit of chili just to make it exciting.
And it is for me. It is the right amount of chili.
And that was one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
I think I ended up going with 7 and 4 with seeds, or it might have been 9 and 7 with seeds. I've got it written down somewhere. So just taking some of the seeds out so I can get lots of the Scotch bonnet come through,
Yeah.
but the heat just needs to tickle, so you know that it's in there, but it's not covering up all the nuances that we really want to capture.
And so that's what I'm getting on the nose is the Scotch bonnet and the honey. So it's the fruit from the Scotch bonnet with the spice in the background, but the fruitiness of that Scotch bonnet and probably the
Super
mango. But
The other thing is you put in there, because I also get a little bit of earthiness from chilies as well. And this already had this nice earthiness come through from the barrel and from the fermentation style as well. So you get that little bit underneath as well. You got this sort of earthy, mushroomy aroma underneath, and then you get a little bit of fruit and a little bit of this Scotch bonnet sweetness. So
yeah, let's get into it.
enjoy.
Oh, so for me, that combo is just it's definitely spicy, but it's not.
It's not unbearable.
No,
right?
no.
And the mango just allows everything to stick to your mouth as well. But the heat is quite short.
Yeah.
So comparing, especially if you had it just after the plum, the heat's going to be, like we talked about the sweetness being shocking to the palate or the alcohol shocking to the palate. The heat's a little bit of a shock to the palate. But as you go to the second and third go, that heat starts, your body gets used to it. You get a little bit of that sort of adrenaline rush from the spice as well, and it creates quite a nice round drink.
Yeah. Wow. Let's have another little open up, won't it?
Yeah, and these ones are barrel fermented and barrel aged, so nice and oxidized. They've got a little bit of that sherry sort of character, a little bit nutty underneath. Not a lot, just because we use first fill bourbon barrels, you don't want to take too much of the bourbon character on, so we only barrel age them for about 3 months.
So on a second swig, the heat is receded a little bit, and you can get more of the mead coming out, and that's really cool. It's just gently warming.
Yeah, you can really get that this is orange blossom honey as well.
Yeah.
It's got this nice acidic sort of profile to it as well. But guys,
well, hopefully you've enjoyed that tour, whistle stop tour, or not so whistle stop tour, through our meads. If you have any questions or you want to let us know what your favourite was, tag us in your photos. Everyone loves a bit of social.
Yeah.
And get in touch.
So guys, thank you so much for stopping by.
Thanks, guys.
Take care.